So I'd like to talk about human fountain. Falling, landing, climbing a ladder, running across the plane, going at the right time. It was everything that I thought was not going to be possible. And it was commissioned by the London Olympiad, the 2012 London Olympiad, the Mayor of London, and Ruth Mackenzie, the producer of the entire Cultural Olympiad. And she asked STREB to do some events on the Thames. And one of the events that we did right in Trafalgar Square, it was called Human Fountain. And we had premiered this at the Armory prior to that. So you might wonder where the name Human Fountain came from. And the fountain designers, they're called WET, designed the Bellagio fountain. And I went there years before this with Cynthia Maeda, Joe Melillo, and John Nakagawa. We went to Las Vegas. And I saw the Bellagio fountain, and it was musical, and it kept changing, and hunks of water would fall, and you know, I wanted to call this Human Fountain because the dancers were pretending they were little tubes of water, and splashes, and landings, and rising back up again. And so I thought it was a perfect name for this piece, and a very, very, very brave performance by all of the dancers, because I wanted to experiment about what would it look like when someone's on the other side of Trafalgar Square, 200 feet away. Would it still have any resonance? And so we were commissioned also by the Armory. Christy Edmonds was the artistic director at the time in 2011. And I wanted to see what would happen if Human Fountain was at one end of this 300-foot-long drill hall, and people were sometimes 200 feet away from it, but would it still make it impact when people, when the body itself is miniaturized? The people got this big. What happens when people are far away from an action event and the body is miniaturized? Could I still have any kind of a residual initial response while they were doing what they were doing? Would they understand it enough because the body wasn't front and center size-wise? And I realized that it wasn't so much what the body was doing, it was where it was. And a series of very complicated scripts. And this is the three-tiered scaffold platform, vertical. And this is the 25 by 25 very specially constituted mat. So you could fall from 30 feet down and land safely if you aimed correctly. But this dance, where we had ultimately 32 people diving off, we were making this dance for a couple of years, I'm going to say, and it was really difficult to figure out how you got like 32 dancers to be able to coordinate where they were coming from, and the place they landed had to be absolutely perfect, and their runoff had to be perfect because there were people landing all around them all the time. So there was a legislation not just on the ground or on the stanchions of the scaffold tower, but in the air on the way down. And so there were all these perimeters that had to be temporally accurate and spatially absolutely accurate. And it was really one of the most exciting dances I've ever made. It was really not just compositional, but it was really, it demonstrated what the body could do in space and time, and how it could achieve an accuracy that we had never been able to achieve before. And I was able to see 3C, 4C, R6, and right, left, center, right, center, left, right, left, center, left, right, left, center, center, right, center, left. So you have the whole inscription of falling bodies. And at the very end, you know, all 32 people went at once. And that was, are you kidding me? To see a mass of 32 bodies in the air, landing canonically, because they're coming from higher up or not. But it was my favorite. It's just been one of my favorite dances that I've ever made, because it was so complex and impossible to imagine. And there were a lot of tears before bedtime, I will say, but we got through it. And I was very, very honored to present this in London in 2012 and at the Armory in 2011. But this was like a dream dance. I thought it's one of my greatest. And there were, I think, like maybe 11 or 12 that were London dancers, and we had to pause in Human Fountain because it was like dive off, land, take the impact, get up, climb up the stairs, go to the next level, dive off. And it's definitely was, I'd say, harder than the hill dance that I talk about some other time. Well, it was harder than running up and down a hill. And so my dancers, and there were, I think, at least, how many were there? There were maybe, I had 18 dancers, and then the rest of them were the London dancers. And they did their dance during the pause. And so my dancers stood there like, while the London dancers were going. You know, it was just a great solution. And, you know, I think, you know, Sarah Donnelly helped coach the dancers in London, and Cassandra Joseph, you know, coached our extras. And so just goes on and on. There's thousands of different, not thousands, but hundreds of different events that I choreographed.